first down. Fires wide. Juan Daniels, touchdown, Georgia.
This is your favorite receiver, Juan Daniels, and you're listening to the DGD Podcast with my man, Robert Reynolds. Go Dogs!
Welcome to this episode of the DGD Podcast. It is cocktail party week. Oh my God, as a Georgia fan, I cannot wait for this, but we've got a lot to talk about here. Got Mark Schipper from Fifth Down College Football here. Going to talk a lot about this Odyssey that he's doing right now. If you're not familiar with it, it's on his social media. There's a lot to go there, but I'm going to let him talk about that more on the show today. But look, first, like I said, welcome to the DGD Podcast, the NCDGD himself, Robert Reynolds, and brought to you by La Terrain. Use code DGD at checkout to get 10% off of your purchase. It is La-Terrain for those listening on podcast, La-Touraine.com. Use code DGD at checkout and get 10% off of your purchase. With that being said, welcome, Mark, to the show. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be on. It's going to be a fun week and a fun game in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah, and the good thing about it is you're actually going to be there, as a lot of Georgia fans will be. And honestly, let's go ahead and jump straight into this Odyssey because to me it's one of the most intriguing type of things that I noticed on social media, and I like keeping up with it. But let's talk a little bit more about it and maybe why you wanted to start doing this. So with that being said, what wanted you to do this Odyssey to speak?
Yeah, pure love of college football and, early life fascination with college football. And it's just been something I stuck with. I'm a writer. I've been reporting and feature writing for the last 10 years, but that was never intended to be a career. So I wanted to move into books. And a college football book sounded good to me. It was something I loved and something I could get into. So I knew the way I wanted to write it. In college football, as you know, it's a highly regional game. People are into their conference, they're into their local teams, and they kind of spread out haphazardly. They may not follow the rest of the country as closely as they follow their own, but I've always followed the game nationally. So the book I wanted to write is I wanted to get into everybody's folk cultures, their local traditions, their local histories, and the big rivalry games. I thought was the best way to do that, showcasing some of the top teams from the region, telling how they got together, why they got together, and then using that as jumping off points to tell the bigger story about college football and American history. So the project grew from that concept.
Yeah, I noticed. I think when I first started following was when your first week here. For those watching, I'm going to pull up a overlay here for people to see this. So basically, up to this week, right? You're going to be in Jacksonville this week. So far this week, if for people watching, this is where he's been each week in order here. And I want to let you explain each week and maybe just give a brief reason when you explain it, why you chose that week, if that's fair to you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. LSU, UCLA, a couple reasons there. LSU is a major Southern team, which is why I went back to Baton Rouge later in the year against Florida. You can see I went to school at UCLA. So I wanted to anchor this project. It's not just a college football story. It's the travel odyssey around the country. So I wanted to personalize it a little bit and start where I started. But UCLA also has the distinction of being a major college football program on the West Coast. USC built West Coast football as we know it. UCLA came in almost 30 years after USC had started. But UCLA became a major figure in college football as well, from Rose Bowls to Heisman winners to national titles and to really helping to integrate the game. Jackie Robinson played at UCLA and many other notable athletes. So UCLA had a major role in building college football. Texas, Arkansas was a game of the century, 1969, number one versus number two. Many historical implications there. President Nixon famously choppered into that game, and he was using it in his re-election campaign in 1972. He thought he could win votes by attending a big college football game, which points towards my thesis, which says that college football is inseparable from American history and culture. So if a president uses a college football game to try and win a presidential election, or at least help him, it's pretty fair proof that what I'm saying is true. Nebraska, Oklahoma, these were back-to-back game of the centuries. 2 years later, 1971, Oklahoma, Nebraska, number 1 versus number 2. Nebraska was on the way to back-to-back titles. Major game and kind of a defining game for the Southwest Great Plains region. So I wanted those teams and that rivalry to tell the story in that part of the country. Ole Miss, Alabama, major Southern schools. Mississippi has not played a big role in terms of championships or titles, but they played a big role in the social story of this country. Talk about the radical 60s and the move to integrate Southern teams and universities. And then Alabama, obviously the monster of all monster traditions. And Alabama's been everywhere. First 4 national titles, won in the Rose Bowl. I don't think I need to say too much about why Alabama's in this book. Oklahoma, Texas, same thing. Big Southwest rivalry. Had to have that. Florida, LSU was pure Southern flavor. Talk about Florida, Louisiana, the big tailgates. Unfortunately, that one did not work out like I wanted it to. I was hoping for a top 15 kind of game. Night kickoff in Death Valley. It kicked off at 11 a.m. But to make up for that, it was one of the best games I've been at this year. For anybody who watched that, you know why. It was an incredibly exciting game, and I was glad I was there. SC Notre Dame, the major intersectional rivalry in this sport, West Coast, Midwest. Usually rivals are very close to each other geographically. This is a cross-country rivalry, and it's a ferocious one. So that's why I was there. And then Florida, Georgia, baby. That's major SEC rivalry, major Southern rivalry, and really the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It'll always be that to me. Encompasses a lot of things that are just pure college football. And the reason I'm writing this book, from the land dispute between Florida and Georgia to the disputed records in the series to the traditions. I know the Okefenokee ore is new and it's not big, but it's interesting because it's 1,000-year-old cypress tree in the Okefenokee swamp between the two states. So it's really, even though it's new, it kind of embodies what a college rivalry is all about, which is that geography, that hostility, the disputes for players, the disputes over records, the close games, the seasons ruined and all that stuff. And then, of course, you got the huge atmosphere down there along the riverbank and at the formerly called Gator Bowl. And again, I go with the old stuff, so I still call it the Gator Bowl. So that's kind of how I got here.
You know, it's interesting here. I should have put a disclaimer out, right? If you're not a history buff, you might want to be careful. I'm a history buff, so this is just music to my ears. So my fault for anybody that listens to this and you're not a fan of history. But look, when it comes to the fifth down, Odyssey, I think the history, talking about how college football has been, a staple and really, like you said, kind of regional, but it's nice to see, obviously me being in the South, kind of seeing what football, college football more so is like on the West Coast and up north and getting a lot of history in the meantime. So for me, obviously these big games, would it makes sense to go, especially I think, the Red River, Florida LSU is kind of one. I know you mentioned it wasn't what you wanted it to be, like a nighttime in Baton Rouge. Yeah. In my opinion, watching a night game in Baton Rouge is a different experience, right? It's just something about it down there. As soon as night, it just becomes like a bunch of crazy lunatics. Yeah. And that makes for good football, in my opinion, too, and an environment. So, obviously both teams have underwhelmed a little bit, but it is what it is. And obviously, the cocktail party, I want to get your thoughts here real fast. A quick question before we go on to the second half.
Yeah.
So obviously there's been a debate here, between, Georgia fans, things like that, where, people are torn on whether it wants to stay in Jacksonville or move it to a home and home. If you being a third party, would you like to see it in Jacksonville continue, or would you like to see it home and home?
Oh, I love it in Jacksonville. I love the neutral site. I love the story behind that with the easy railroad access and the higher ticket prices and more monies for the school. I think the neutral site gives it a festival atmosphere that it wouldn't have on campus. And I think it's also one of the unique games in college football. And if you have something that's legitimately and organically unique in college football that goes back many decades. I think like 1933, they decided to make it permanent in Jacksonville, something like that. I think if you have something that goes back that far, unless you have a really good reason to change it, you shouldn't. So this rivalry would change in my eyes. If I was writing this book down the road a few years and it was home and home, I wouldn't be attending this game. So for me, Jacksonville is the spot to keep it.
A lot of I think Jay Shipes here says anyone that owns a timeshare or condo in Jacksonville wants it to stay. And obviously, they just recently, I think the mayor of Jacksonville basically was announcing that their contract through 2025 now will stay in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But a lot of Georgia fans kind of understand that. To me, you look at the proximity of this, right? And it's 72 miles for the Gators, right, coming up from Gainesville. But you have to kind of take a plane to go from Athens. So there's been a lot of discussion and things like that. And I've seen a lot of theories on how to even it out, things like that, where you have some, 1 year playing in Jacksonville, the next one playing in Atlanta, things like that. But obviously like the traditionalists let me be clear there. Look, being in Jacksonville, it's always a fun time. It seems to be almost half and half every year, right? I don't expect it to be this year just because how big the gap is between these two, but it's still a crazy ass rivalry, right? It's going to be interesting, regardless of what's going on outside of that. Once you get into the cocktail party environment, it's just a whole different world. So far to the games you've been to, right? I want to pull this back up just to just for clear, help everybody out. What was your favorite experience, a game day experience, out of the ones that you've been to so far?
Yeah, it's really tough. They're all interesting and unique for different reasons. I went through Norman twice for Nebraska, Oklahoma, and then I was in Norman again before I actually drove down to Austin and then back up to Dallas so I could get both distances and see what both teams go through. It's actually interesting when you talk about the disparity in distances for the cocktail party. One of the things that's really interesting about the Red River Shootout is that it's almost equidistant. It's like almost exactly the same distance from Austin to Dallas as it is Norman to Dallas. So I understand what Georgia fans are talking about there. It is a legitimate complaint. I would actually say that Oklahoma, Texas, if I had to pick one, would probably be my favorite for several reasons. The Cotton Bowl, the house that Doak Walker built, tons of college football heritage there. The State Fair at Texas, the way both fan bases take over, it's a 50-50 split, and they take over dining halls and start chanting, and it's just this huge crush of mixed colors and everybody in a very festival-like atmosphere. And then for a neutral stadium, it is rocking in the Cotton Bowl, and it's fascinating to watch half the stadium happy and half the stadium miserable. It's rarely both happy at once unless we're talking about pregame or halftime or something. Yeah. So I would say Oklahoma, Texas has probably stuck out as kind of the most unique college football game day experience so far.
Now, with that being said, is there one specific game so far this year? Obviously, you have this list here that you've went to, but is there one specific game or anything like that to where you wish you would have went instead of that week? Is there anything like that? Like, I think my thought maybe being, and I want to get your thoughts on this, the A&M Bama game, right, at Kyle Field. That kind of made me wonder, when that game was played, is that a game that you would have rather went to over the one that you did? Or, is there another game in your head that, damn, I should have went to that one?
Yeah, there's really not, because I didn't select these games for their value in 2021. I'd hope that many of these would be good, and usually they are because they're big rivalry games. Like Ole Miss, Bama was obviously a roll of the dice because that game can be a lot of Bama and a little Miss, and it kind of ended up being that way. But I picked these games with the bigger idea of the book in mind. So I needed their historical value and what they meant to building this sport to what we have today, to this multi-billion-dollar TV business that everybody loves. I needed that historical stuff as much as 2021. So And I will also say I've essentially had amazing games at almost every stop. There have only been about 2 that weren't really competitive, and the others have just been sensational games, either upsets or just really tight games all the way. And I don't have any weekends where I thought I wish I would have done something else.
Yeah, I didn't know. Obviously, I knew the logic behind it, but I knew it. But obviously, there's been some really interesting games, and with the parity in college football so far this year,
Yeah.
It's just chaotic every week. So, to me, I feel like if as a purist, right, I think that's really exciting. Especially when you're going across the country. But let's go over here to the brigade here, looking, talking about obviously the cocktail party and things like that. Kirby's visor says if they get Gainesville and Jacksonville, we want Atlanta and Athens. And look, and obviously there's going to be, like I said, a bunch of theories on how to make it somewhat more even, right? But like I said, obviously we know that, Jacksonville, look, there's a lot of money that, both Georgia and Florida get, right?
Yeah.
Tons of money comes out of that game for both schools. Yeah. So, obviously, look, what we want, sometimes money overweighs that, especially when it's going to, to benefit the athletic departments, things like that. You kind of have to make that kind of call. But, with that being said, Tennille also says cycle all 3: Athens, Gainesville, Jacksonville. Like obviously, Kirby's mentioned this. I think Kirby wants to, kind of do a home and home just because it takes away from a recruiting weekend, but to balance that, I think what it should be, and if you're looking at that right there, honestly, I think you have the theory of, whoever is the determined home team that year gets to bring in recruits. Maybe that's a way to, right? Maybe that's a way to kind of even that playing field out from a recruiting standpoint, because, typically Georgia and Florida lose a home game every year. Regardless of your schedule, if it's playing in Jacksonville, you don't get recruits. I think you should allow recruits, but make it similar to a home game. I think that's how that kind of gets squared away there. That would help Kirby out. I think with the recruiting situation.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. It's interesting to hear Kirby say that too, because there are kind of a few guys who are really all in on understanding this era of college football, and I'd say Nick Saban's obviously the top one, and then Kirby Smart, who came from that lineage, is following that game plan in terms of just all out recruiting. So it's interesting to hear his mindset on this is different than a fan's mindset, a television executive's mindset. His whole thing is whatever I can do to keep getting good players into Georgia. I like that idea. I think both teams honestly should be allowed to bring recruits to this game for this reason. If I'm a recruit and Florida and Georgia want me on their football team, I want to experience this atmosphere. This is a huge selling point. I think it's a better selling point than you get every other year. You're going to get to go to Gainesville, and every other year you're going to play in Athens. If I'm a big time recruit, this is a showcase game. It's the 3:30 CBS. Most of the country tunes into it.
Basically every year, 3:30.
Yeah, basically every year. So let both teams bring recruits to this game and show them you come to our school, once a year, you're going to get to come down here and play in this wild festival-like atmosphere, and it's going to be a major memory for you as a college football player.
Yeah, I think with your point here, just, from an instance as a recruit, if I want to go to this game, pick your side, right? Basically, I want to come, I want to take a visit and sit on the Florida side, as a Florida.
Yeah.
And that right there, you kind of, basically allocate some seats for recruits for Georgia, allocate some seats for Florida, things like that. And look, for me here, I know the game's always fun, right? It's always fun. I don't care, where teams are right now, where Georgia is, where Florida is. I'm always going to hate the Gators. Look, that's just me. You see the G. Oh, sorry. You see the G. You already know that I'm going to hate my damn Gators. But you always want to see, obviously, you always want to see this competitive game because it means more outside of just that game, right?
Yeah.
You look at recruiting. You look at, just what it brings, to athletic departments, things like that. So, I get the logic to stay in Jacksonville, but I do think that, you bring up arguments like Kirby does with the recruiting situation. I think you alleviate that by doing what we've talked about. And that way both people kind of get happy, even though you're losing a home game.
Yeah.
For instance, recruits love Athens, and we're about to transition to a perfect segment here to ask you another question. What it's like to go to Athens and visit Sanford Stadium and the campus, right? And with that being said, you were actually on the campus, right, and taking a little stroll around Athens. So, what was your experience like there? I don't know if you've ever been to Athens or not. What was it like for you?
Yeah, this is my first trip. Beautiful campus. I know when Georgia was building that campus, they modeled some of it off Yale University. Georgia has a very interesting history with Yale, from their early rivalry to actually getting Sanford Stadium built. I'll tell you, it was hillier than I thought it was going to be. Nobody told me how hilly Athens was. So I got out on a couple jaunts, and, the map doesn't show the hills. And next thing I know, I was just going up and down and up and down. But once you get used to that, man, a beautiful place. I love where the stadium is. Some reps from the athletic department took me through Sanford yesterday. We kind of went through where the players walk in, went through the game day traditions, visited the monuments, and obviously the UGA, graveyard. That doesn't sound very happy. It's more cheerful than a graveyard.
It's definitely more of a memorial type
Memorial. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm kind of blank on the word. The UGA Memorial, which is very cool. Went to the UGA dog kennel down there, got all that story, and man, really, really cool stadium. I understand why Kirby wants to get kids in there. We actually went to the end zone, the open end zone, and looked down into the section where they bring the recruits, and they got to it's a little VIP. There's some nicer seats. They all have seat cushions, and it's right above the tunnel where the players run out. And the guys were telling me Arch Manning was row one a couple weeks ago on his recruiting visit, and loved it. So, yeah, I get it from Kirby's perspective, but Athens is a great campus.
Obviously, I know on social media, things like that, I've been following you, like I said, and I knew when you were coming to Sanford. I saw the picture teasing it, right? Teasing you inside Sanford Stadium, and I know we had talked about you doing some video as well. So if anybody's curious about that, I'm sure that you'll be posting that up as well. So definitely, we'll talk more about this, but obviously stay tuned there because there's some video and things like that. Obviously talking about the book as well. But obviously, looking at what Sanford Stadium is about, and we'll transition after this to the rest of the Odyssey. From that right there, obviously 92,000, roughly going on 93,000, right? Capacity.
Right.
I'm a person that I think Josh Brooks and company, it's time to look into expanding, capacity to try to fit 100,000. You look at Bryant Denny, you look at Neyland Stadium, things like that. Kyle Field, 100,000.
Right.
With 93,000, Georgia can be one of the loudest environments in college football, right? With the whiteout at Penn State against Auburn, you have that at a night game, and then you turn around and I don't know if you've heard about Holly Rowe talking about it, but the statistic where a noon kickoff against Arkansas, we were louder, right? Sanford Stadium was louder with like 14,000 people less, right? So just imagine Sanford Stadium with 100,000 or more. To me, that would just be ridiculous because, trying to picture this again, 2019 Notre Dame game comes to mind, right? Yeah. Obviously looking forward into the future, the marquee non-conference matchups, Kirby set up with Ohio State and Clemson, home and homes.
Yeah.
To me, that just screams like you think it's electric now. I can only imagine 100,000 people. Look, dog fans, we're a breed of our own. No pun intended. Look, when it comes down to a kickoff and we're barking, sickling, barking like 100,000 people, that would be absolutely fucking crazy. Just absolutely insane.
Yeah, it would be. I know one of the things about that open west end zone, I believe, out to the road onto campus, I know that was kind of a cherished thing of Vince Dooley's, and he wanted that open so when the public could walk by, they could look into their stadium and their Georgia Bulldogs and have that opportunity. If they wanted to expand, I know I went to school at UCLA and they had a basketball coach named John Wooden. And when John Wooden got Pauley Pavilion built, he was from kind of another era, and he had the area behind the hoops. He did not allow them to start the grandstands until about 30 feet behind the baskets, we all know today in basketball, you want people right behind the hoop, distracting the free throw shooters and all that stuff. So
Cameron
when
Indoor's a
UCLA
perfect example of that.
Yeah. So UCLA, when they redid Pauley Pavilion a few years ago for a couple $100 million, they brought the stands underneath the hoops. Coach Wooden had passed away, and it was just time to change Pauley Pavilion. So with Vince Dooley, I suppose there will come a point where you say Coach Dooley had the right idea for the time, but now we need a bigger stadium, and we'd like to close in this end zone and add some more seats and get to 100,000. I could see there being a time when that happens. And if it makes sense financially for Georgia and for the TV networks, I'm sure they'll do it at some point.
I think so too, right? Like you have on the 600 level seats, right? On the visitor side, I'm no engineer, so I'm not going to tell you, how to do it, right? I'm just not, because, well, I'm not an engineer. But, I think there's a way, maybe even to preserve that west end zone, right? And the mystique behind that while still getting to your capacity, goal. Like I said, leave that to the guys that, design this stuff and whatnot. But I do want to kind of transition, obviously, after the cocktail party, where you're going to go and obviously how you're going to finish out this Odyssey, so to speak. So I'm going to let you continue with, obviously, after the cocktail party, where you're going to go and like I said, why you're choosing these locations.
Yeah. Oregon, Washington. So I have UCLA and USC for Southern California. Oregon, Washington are that's a major rivalry in the Pacific Northwest. It's a bitter rivalry. These fans do not like each other. They go at each other all year on Twitter. Husky Stadium in Seattle is one of the great ballparks in college football. Washington calls it the greatest setting. It's on the shores of Lake Washington. It's just beautiful, and they redid it a few years ago and modernized it. And getting to a game at Husky Stadium has always been an important thing to me. And I want those two schools to tell the story of Pacific Northwest college football, Washington being kind of the heritage program, a foundational school in the different iterations of the Pacific Conference. And then Oregon is kind of the nouveau school. Oregon represents a lot of where college football is headed. And Oregon has been the spark plug behind a lot of where college football is headed and a lot of things you see. So that's an interesting story. Florida State, Miami. I came up in the 90s is when I really got into college football, and it became a really important game to me. The state championship of Florida in the 90s between Florida State, Miami, and Florida always had a say in the national title, and it was just a ferocious rivalry. You talk about driving the game into the next century with the level of talent, with the speed of the game, with the ferocity of the game, and the sophistication of the coordinators and everything else. Florida was the driving force in that. So I'm actually going to be traveling up from Miami to Gainesville. I hope to do something cool in Gainesville and then on to Tallahassee for the game. And obviously it doesn't mean what it used to. And so the chapter is kind of a requiem, a look back at the 90s and what it meant and how it affects the game today. Harvard-Yale is the classic heritage game. I'll be at Princeton, then to Harvard, then to Yale at the Yale Bowl. The Rose Bowl was modeled after the Yale Bowl. And the Ivy Leagues are the reason we have college football. They created the game. They built the first interest in it. They started the Thanksgiving Day games at neutral sites. And everybody was chasing the Ivy Leagues. The Ivy League coaches went west and south and built programs. And it's the foundational spot for the game. So that's my heritage game. Ohio State, Michigan, obviously the major rivalry in the industrial north. That was another game when the sport left the East in the Ivy Leagues. They called it West, but it was really the Midwest. The Western Conference, now known as the Big Ten, was the next place where the sport of college football really boomed. The Big Ten was created in 1895. You look at the SEC as 1932 or 33. So the Big Ten was almost 40 years old at the time the major Southern Conference formed. So Michigan, Ohio State, I hope it's going to be interesting. Ohio State's been dominant, as everyone knows.
I think it'll be a good one this year. I think it'll be closer than most of the other ones in the past, in my opinion.
I agree, and I hope you're right. And then after that, I'm going to the SEC Championship, the best conference title game, the one that started it all. So I actually can't wait for that at the new stadium in Atlanta. I was very young, but I remember the the Florida-Alabama opening game. It almost ruined Alabama's national title chances. It was almost a disaster. Had Florida won that game, had Spurrier's team pulled the upset, we might not have the conference championships we have today, but Alabama won and all was well. And then, of course, Army-Navy, which outside the Ivy League, this is my major heritage game. I have a friend who went to West Point. He's going to join me. I think we're sitting with the graduating class of his class, the old
Cadets
that are coming back. So that's another one I'm really, when you talk about the pageantry and the brigades marching onto the field and the Corps cadets marching onto the field and the president possibly being there, and the whole show at that game is something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to be, most people don't really pull for Army or Navy unless you're a vet, or
Right.
something like that, or you actually went there, to be a cadet and officer, things like that.
Right.
But look, myself as a vet here, I look at that game and it's more to it than just football almost, right? You look at the, look at the, like you said, the pageantry and the culture and the, the environment, president going there every year, things like that. I know you have the Air Force Academy, which Air Force, I like how they're playing on the field.
Yeah.
But there's just something about, obviously, and with the Commander-in-Chief trophy between the three,
Right.
Look, Army, Navy, there's just something about it. It's historic. And it's always a good time. And about anybody outside, anybody in college football is going to pull for nobody there. They're just going to watch the football game and have a good time. So, I look at it that way, right? I think it's just something that, it's just something I could see making sense why you would want to go there just based off the history alone. With that being said, out of those games, which one are you most excited for?
If Michigan and Ohio State stay on their courses and Michigan holds serve and gets into that game either undefeated or one loss, I'm really looking forward to Michigan and Ohio State. I kind of wish it was in Columbus because I've been to a game in Ann Arbor, but a packed big house the day after Thanksgiving sounds like a lot of fun to me. Or sorry, the Saturday after Thanksgiving sounds like a lot of fun to me. And then the Army-Navy is one I'm really looking forward to. We talked about all the pageantry and heritage and stuff. Army-Navy is another one of these games that was a driving force for much more in American culture. When you talk about television and the spread and use of television, Army-Navy was on TV before almost any other game. And oftentimes it was the only game that was broadcast way in the early games of the early years of television. So it's been, that's college football. When I talk about being baked into the history and heritage of the United States, that's the other kind of stuff I'm talking about. The development of radio, the development of television, the development of sports as a property that we consume in this country. College football, as much as anything, Major League Baseball, you can put right there, but college football is the driving force behind that. And Army-Navy is one of those major games. So I'm looking forward to all of them, but those two I'm kind of I have high hopes for.
I mean, rightfully so, right? I think you look at the playoff implications, right, with Michigan and Ohio State. Obviously, like you said, the history behind the Army-Navy game, everybody can watch it, right? I think it's just something you can watch and just enjoy the game, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's an ugly game, productivity-wise on the field, it's still one of those games that, like, most people tune into. Not everybody, right? It's not for everybody, but, most people will hop in. So, look, we're going to have a Q&A here, obviously, for everybody in the brigade, that they know what's going on. But with that being said, I know you have some travel stuff to go on. So, if you want to stick around, obviously feel free. But if not, we completely understand. But before we wrap up the show, I do want to give you a chance to let people know where they can find out more about you and the Odyssey, if they're interested to find out more about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll stick around for a few minutes. I got a few minutes to take some questions if people have them. So I'm all over social media. Fifth Down, you can see my shirt. It's Fifth Down, 5TH, and CFB for college football. That's fifthdowncfb.com. That's my website. If you go there, please drop off your email. I send out a newsletter a week. That's where you can kind of follow where I'm at and what's going on. And that's where I'll be keeping people up to date on the book that's being written and when that's ready to go. Beyond the website, I'm all over social media. I'm on Twitter all the time. We chat all the time on Twitter. Instagram Twitter and Instagram and YouTube are going to be the best. I'm on Facebook, but not very often. And I'm on LinkedIn a little bit, but not very often. So if you want to chat, find me on Twitter, YouTube videos, all that stuff. But the website, go there, drop off your email. We can keep in touch, and you can follow this book project, which is the end point of this whole thing. It's a book on college football and its place in American history.
Absolutely. So with that being said, though, guys, we're going to wrap up today's show. But before we do, just want to let everybody know, listening, watching, November 5th, we're doing obviously the DGD podcast. We'll be doing our Veterans Day show. We will not have shows that following week, the week of Veterans Day, which is why we are doing it early. So November 5th, we're going to do special guests. We're going to talk college football, do a military story time for anybody that's curious and wants to hear stories about, experiences while we were, me and guests were in the military. We'll do that right there. Look, everything, donations are going to be able to happen as well. Donations go straight to the Wounded Warrior Project. And also with lots of rain for the week from November 5th to November 12th, there is a special code, DGD Vet Day. Use that code for 15% off. And if you do use that code, you will be entered to win a Lots of Rain gift card. So with that being said, this wraps it up for the DGD podcast. Mark, just wanted to say thank you again for coming on. My pleasure having you on. I know you're getting famous, man. People, like I said, you were on Feinbaum and things like that. We'll talk about that with the brigade in just a second if they want to. Obviously, look, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, follow, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Make sure you like it as well. It helps the show a lot. Wherever you get your podcast, find us, listen to us, rate us, review us. With that being said, though, go Dogs, fuck the Gators, and have a good one. We'll catch you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me on.
This is the DGD Podcast. Go Dogs.
We are back, Brigade. We didn't leave you for too long. You know how it is. Jay Shipes. Well, we're going to read the first question. We'll let Mark answer this. I know you got a couple minutes. We'll read a couple questions here.
Yeah.
Which band is the most annoying? Hated sitting in the end zone near Michigan State. All those Trojan fans walking around in green Warrior skirts and flip-flops at Citrus Bowl against Georgia. What band is the most annoying if you had to choose?
That's interesting because I'll name another Trojans band, USC's band, because USC has some very cool fight songs and march songs, and I say that as a UCLA graduate. So they have some really cool traditions they do, but USC's band never stops, and they play that march 400 times a game. They play it if there's like a defensive tackle for loss. They play it if there's an offensive gain. They play it after a first down. They play it if the sun comes out from behind a cloud. They play it for any and all reasons, and it never stops. So in terms of just pure annoying, it's the other Trojans, USC.
I'll look at it this way, right? I could see that, but especially you've been at UCLA, like dun 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 dun. I could get it, right? I get it. As a Georgia fan, I'm going to say Tennessee because I do not want to hear fucking Rocky Top anymore. I just don't. Look, I'm not going to be mad about it because like the actual song is not bad. But when you associate that song with Tennessee, it just has a different level of like just agony, right, to me. So
yeah, it's not always that the songs are bad. It's like the frequency you hear them and the moments you hear them. It's like, dental work is good for your teeth, but it's never
it's
much
a bitch
fun
while you're doing it.
Right, exactly.
With that being said, though, out of the games you've been to, what band or marching band or whatever had the coolest intro pregame, like the pregame halftime shows? Everybody knows the Ohio State band, right? But obviously you haven't been there just yet. I would think, out of the ones so far, which ones were your favorite in regards to the bands?
Yeah, I saw Ohio State at a Big Ten championship game. They were good. A few teams have really good bands. Alabama's band is really good. LSU's band is really good. What Notre Dame's band puts on a really great show. When you talk about interaction between fans and band, Notre Dame's student section is very much in sync with their band. And I love marching bands. To me, marching bands and the pageantry and the pomp around them are what separates college football from the NFL. These are our traditions that make us a separate game. And so those bands I named are all really good. I had a lot of fun with Notre Dame's band last Saturday.
I look at it this way. I think hold on, let's see. Oh my God, Jay brought up the point. Remember the halftime band that drew a penis on the field? Crazy.
Which one was that?
I don't even know. I don't remember. Jay, in the comments, let us know which one you're talking about. I feel like that would be something you would remember. Like,
yeah,
if you saw it, you would know, and it's like haunting you if you remember. I honestly look. I don't know what to say to that, but
yeah. Send a link to that one so we can find out what's going on there.
I need a link to that.
Oh, you know what? It might have been that rocket ship. I know there was a rocket ship that was made a few years ago that was very phallus-like, and it was a big joke. Man. But I don't think it was intentional. I don't know.
It looked like Pedro. If you know Varsity Blues, you get the reference.
Oh, yeah.
No, honestly, though, obviously with the Odyssey, man, it's one of those things that was interesting. What was your experience like talking to Paul, man? Look, Georgia fans, either you love them or you hate them. I think that's with every SEC fan, really, even college football fan. What was that experience like going on the Fonbaum show?
Yeah, here's the thing I say about all that stuff is these guys, when they're on the radio and television, you got to remember that they're not there to be right. They're there to be interesting or compelling. They're there to drive conversation. So love or hate Paul, he does a great job at getting people to react to what he's putting out, and that's his job. People watch things they hate as much as they watch things they love. It's kind of an amazing thing. So talking to Paul was very easy. The conversation itself was easy. It almost didn't happen, though. I was in my car looking for Sanford Stadium. Crazy travel day. Got in way late. Flight was delayed by an hour and 15 minutes. I'd had like 90 minutes to get to extra to get to Athens and get to Sanford Stadium and set up. Instead, I got there and I had about 15. I'd never been to Athens. I didn't know where to park. I didn't know how to do anything. So I'm driving, and the phone call comes in from ESPN. It's a FaceTime call. I actually took the FaceTime call while I was driving my car and just said, hold on, tossed the phone down, pulled the first right, saw a little turn in, pulled the second right, got out of the car. There was like a concrete half wall, and the guys are in my ear. Man, are you going to be able to get on in time? We're going on in 90 seconds. I said, just hold on, man. Got out the car, put it in my selfie stick, stood there, sat down on the half wall. Like 20 seconds before this thing started, the thing came up, and he started talking to me. So talking to Paul was the easy part. I thought it might not happen.
You gotta love the logistics of travel. Tanil says Paul has to do that 4 hours a day. That's insane, intense. Yeah. I feel like look, we do this for about an hour, like twice a week right now, right?
Right.
So finding 4 hours a day, I think, let's be honest here, taking the calls and the guests make it easy, but it's still a lot of stuff to talk about and redundancy. In my opinion.
Absolutely.
All right, Jay Shipes, the penis band here. Kansas State band director got fired the day before. It was hilarious.
That's
look
great,
it up,
man. I'm gonna have to look that up because
I'm just gonna let you know now. If you follow me on my Twitter, I'm gonna find it. If I find it on YouTube, I'm gonna share that link. Be prepared.
Perfect.
I'll post it. I don't care.
Yeah, that's great.
If I see it and I look at it right here, I'll probably die. Like, I'll cry at work or whatever and not care. No shame. No shame. Kirby Visor is laughing at it. Yeah. If I saw a penis on the field, I might lose it. Like, look, we're old, right? We're old. We're grown men. But look, sometimes things like that happen, right?
That's why when you get fired from a job, they take your key card and shut down your computer like 5 minutes later, because people, when they get fired, weird things happen. So the fact that guy got fired the day before and then that happened on the field, that was somebody screwed up on the security there.
Well, speaking of getting fired and still doing their job, what about Ed Orgeron? What are your thoughts on that? I thought they would have let him go and just did an interim coach, but they didn't. I don't know how to feel about it, man. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't either. I guess they did it for stability's sake and to kind of let him finish it out, because from the outside looking in, I think I've seen a lot of what I would call inaccurate characterizations of what happened. From what I know, that the internal dynamics at LSU had really deteriorated, that the program was kind of teetering on chaos with him. It wasn't that he hadn't won a national title again. That's kind of then the narrative is, he doesn't win you a title every year and he's going to be fired. That's clearly not what was going on there. But at the same time, I don't think LSU's administration wanted to look crazy to the outside world, which is just 2 years removed from one of the greatest seasons in the sports history. You throw a guy out, halfway through the year. So I think they're just trying to keep it as like a clean divorce. You know what I mean? We're going to stay together for the kids until the end of the year, and we're going to make this as smooth as possible. So that's kind of my interpretation of what's going on there.
Maybe. Obviously you look at, like Auburn letting go of their wide receivers coach, right, mid-season.
Right.
Certain things like this is just kind of awkward. But, to that point, it gives you more time to really hone in on a search, right, trying to get ahead of the game. Right. Yeah. Especially, like obviously with head coaching jobs right now, obviously LSU, everybody's going to be looking at that, and USC, rightfully so. There's so much going on right there. And basically what I'm catching is everybody wants me to tag them in that Kansas State video. So I have a job to do after this. And if that is the case, Neil, I will tag the Brigade and company. Just going to let you know that now. Look, we're going to wrap this thing up, man. I know you've got a lot to do. You've got to get down to Jacksonville, whatnot.
Yes, sir.
So with that being said, I hope you enjoy the cocktail party. I hope it provides the experience that you need. Look, I hope it'd be a good game. Look, Georgia should dominate this game. So prepare yourself.
We'll see. It's college football.
It's a crazy ass rivalry, man. Anything can happen, but
yeah,
we'll see what happens. I've got faith in the Dogs. I think that defense is just too damn nasty right now.
Probably.
Hey, man, look, like I said, safe travels on the way down to Jacksonville, and I hope you have a great day along with the Brigade. I hope everybody has a great day as well. Tune in tomorrow. Hey, showtime 1:30 tomorrow. Remember that. So tune in then. We got Harrison and Juan will be back on. In-depth preview of the cocktail party. You're going to hear it because, look, my shit talking is about to be real tomorrow. Just the way it is. Just the way it is. Mark, like I said, man, thanks again, buddy, and safe travels.
Yeah, appreciate you. We'll be in touch the rest of the year. I see you on Twitter.
Oh, no doubt about that. All right, Brigade, y'all have a great one. Peace out. Go Dogs.